Nostra Aetate makes it very clear that Jew hatred is hatred of Christ because Christ cannot be understood outside his Jewish self-understanding.
Renowned Catholic scholar George Weigel reflects on a pivotal church document that forever clarified the shared inheritance between Judaism and Catholicism. Amid rising acts of hostility against Jews, the church remains unequivocal. Hatred towards the Jewish people is a grave sin. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. I'm Catherine Hadro. Antisemitism can be defined as dehumanizing and hostile beliefs and behaviors that target Jews because of their Jewish identity. It can include violence and harassment or be spread through myths and stereotypes. It is a centuries-old hatred, but cases of anti-Semitism have surged in the United States recently, particularly since the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, and the start of the Israel-Hamas war. In fact, 2024 saw the highest amount of anti-Semitic incidents since the Anti-Defamation League began tracking them nearly 50 years ago. For perspective, there were nearly 3,700 anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. in 2022. In 2023, that number more than doubled to nearly 8,900. In 2024, it rose past 9,000. That's an 893% increase of anti-Semitic attacks in the U.S. over the last decade. That hostility towards the Jewish people is also creeping up in some Catholic circles, being espoused by increasingly influential voices who use their faith to justify their hateful beliefs.
They're even lying about the history of the Star of David. It's a hexagram. It's a cult.
Catholic convert Candace Owens is one of the most popular podcasters in the U.S. today. Her show sits towards the top of the podcast charts. With such a large audience, it's all the more alarming then that Owens has been peddling an increasing number of shocking anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
What you want them to comply with in this case is Germany, Nazi, Hitler, the greatest evil that's ever happened on earth, even though factually and statistically it is not.
It's like a transnational gang. And what they have in common, what binds them together, is their Jewish identity.
Nick Fuentes may be the most infamous self-declared anti-Semite online personality today. He also positions himself as a voice for traditional Catholics.
If you've read the church fathers on this, the Catholics do not believe that Jews are like awesome.
American political conservative commentator Tucker Carlson recently interviewed Nick Fuentes on his show, immediately prompting backlash for giving Fuentes a major platform and with little to no pushback to his anti-Semitic ideology. The Catholic president of the powerful conservative organization, the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, decided to defend Carlson's decision in a video released last week.
I disagree with and even abhor things that Nick Fuentes says. But canceling him is not the answer either.
He's since apologized, but it's caused an uproar and has put a spotlight on whether anti-Semitism is being increasingly accepted and normalized in some conservative and Christian circles.
You have a lot of young men who, having rejected establishmentarian view of American politics and the way it works, have been led by certain influencers into taking up these conspiracy theories about Jewish people and their influence.
Mene Ukwe Burua is a member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which this week published an editorial titled "The New Right's New Anti-Semites," pleading with conservatives to call out an old political poison growing on the new right.
Our goal is that if we call attention to it and fight it right now, hopefully we'll prevent more parts of the U.S. conservative movement from going down that path.
Also in the news, and what's either blatant anti-Semitism or pure ignorance and with failed oversight, Bishop Timothy Sr. of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, denounced last week that a local Catholic school included a replica of the Auschwitz concentration camp gate on its float for the town's annual Halloween parade. The float's designer has since apologized, saying it was his artistic interpretation on how none of us get out of this life alive. Bishop Sr. called it offensive and unacceptable.
There's something weird and mysterious about anti-Semitism. It never seems to go away. Every time we think we've got that vampire buried with a stake through its heart, somehow it rises again.
Dr. Robert George, a scholar at Princeton University and prominent religious freedom advocate, has been one of the most outspoken Catholic leaders against the creeping rise of anti-Semitism, including among Catholics themselves.
Catholics should know better. At this stage, Catholics have no excuse for not knowing better. But nevertheless, they will sometimes even wrap their anti-Semitism in a garment of fidelity to Catholic teaching.
It is a disturbing time to live in, not just because of the resurgence of anti-Semitism, but the extent to which that has poisoned at least elements of the Catholic faithful.
Dr. Richard Crane, a Catholic historian at Benedictine College who specializes in anti-Semitism, explains that a strain of anti-Semitism among some groups of Catholics today is connected to the idea that Vatican II was a mistake and not guided by the Holy Spirit.
The idea that Vatican II and its reforms, not limited to Nostra Aetate, but especially Nostra Aetate, was part of some Jewish Masonic plot. Unfortunately, quote-unquote Catholic influencers, such as Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes, they are making this up out of whole cloth, but the script has been written and it never entirely went away within the church.
It was at the end of Vatican II in 1965 that the Catholic Church released the document Nostra Aetate, marking a major turning point in the church's approach and relations with other faith traditions.
It recognizes Christianity's distinctive truth claims, but at the same time, it recognizes explicitly, I'm using the document's words, not my own, all that is true and holy, all that is good in the other religions of the world.
In Nostra Aetate, meaning in our times, the church declared Christians and Jews share a spiritual patrimony. God did not withdraw his blessing on the Jewish people. It repudiates the idea Jews are collectively responsible for Christ's crucifixion, and it was the first formal denunciation of anti-Semitism. The document states the church, mindful of the patrimony she shares with the Jews and moved not by political reasons, but by the gospel's spiritual love, decries hatred, persecutions, displays of anti-Semitism directed against Jews at any time and by anyone.
Non possiamo negare.
Pope Leo XIV is carrying on the church's stance, strongly condemning anti-Semitism last Wednesday when he dedicated his general audience to Nostra Aetate's 60th anniversary last week.
And so I too confirm that the church does not tolerate anti-Semitism and fights against it on the basis of the gospel itself.
I think the Jewish community in America understands itself beyond itself, meaning that we are a kind of barometer of the civic health of the nation.
Dr. Jonathan Silver, senior vice president of the Jewish educational nonprofit the Tikva Fund, has been watching the heated rhetoric towards the Jewish people with alarm. He's convinced it will take both Catholics and Jews to lean into our biblical inheritance together to combat the anti-Semitism of today.
So much of the anti-Semitism that we've seen, after all, is motivated by an attempt to re-paganize the culture. This is something surely that Catholics and Jews together can try to work against.
How should Catholics contend with the spread of anti-Semitic rhetoric seeping into mainstream platforms today for the sake of our Jewish brothers and sisters and for the sake of our own soul? We are joined by a guest who provides a thoughtful perspective on the Catholic response to anti-Semitism and how the church can confront this age-old hatred. Mary Eberstadt is a founder of the Coalition of Catholics Against Anti-Semitism, a leading Catholic author of several acclaimed books, and a social commentator known for her analysis of faith, culture, and the modern world. Mary holds the Panula Chair in Christian Culture at the Catholic Information Center and is a senior research fellow at the Faith and Reason Institute. Mary, thank you so much for joining us for this important discussion. First, I just want to ask for your observations right now about the uptick of anti-Semitic rhetoric that we're seeing online and how we as Catholics must grapple with that. How would you describe this moment that we are in?
Well, thank you for having me, Catherine. And First of all, I'd like to say anti-Semitism, as you note, is an ancient evil, but it has acquired new life online, like other ancient evils that have acquired new life online. And I think it's very important for Catholics not only to do the right thing here and avoid this evil, but even more to take the lead in fighting against it. And the reason I say that is that Catholic teaching, as we have heard, is unbroken, firm, and unsparing about this particular sin.
As I mentioned, incidents of anti-Semitism have surged since the October 7th Hamas attack in Israel. And there are some who would say that the anti-Semitic label is used too broadly for anyone who offers any critique of the state of Israel and its actions. Can you clarify what anti-Semitism is and what it is not as it pertains to our stance as Catholics towards Israel?
Well, I can first say, how do you recognize anti-Semitism? How do you know it when you see it? First of all, you know it when people talk about the Jews. The Jews is a stereotype, a noxious stereotype. You know you're looking at anti-Semitism when people are blaming social dissolution and other problems on, quote, the Jews. Now, how do we distinguish this from Israeli foreign policy? It seems to me it's pretty easy. Catholics are heirs to a tradition of just war theory. And the interesting thing about people who say that Israel is in the wrong is that the kinds of anti-Semites who are making that case never stop to talk about just war theory. Under just war theory, nations that are attacked and people who are attacked have the right to defend themselves. I have yet to see from any anti-Semitic quarter the argument that what Israel is doing violates just war theory. So in other words, what I'm saying is that people are not intellectually serious about saying there's a conflation going on between anti-Semitism and second thoughts about what the Israelis are doing. That's not a serious argument.
You have called anti-Semitism the new pornography because it degrades its users. Can you expand on that point?
Yes, of course. It bears several similarities to pornography. Number one, it is usually online, committed furtively, anonymously, and there's seediness about it. The other thing it has in common with pornography is that when this kind of consumption comes to light, people are invariably embarrassed by it, ashamed of it, wish they hadn't done it, are ridiculed for it. And that's what I mean in saying that this is moral pornography. And I want to emphasize that message to Catholics in particular, because Catholics took the lead back when hardly anyone else was doing it in saying that pornography is wrong, it's bad, it's something you should stay away from. And a lot of us were ridiculed in the public square for making those kinds of arguments. That's why I say again, Catholics need to be in the lead of fighting against anti-Semitism, because this online anti-Semitism bears such a resemblance to pornography online.
When it comes to this subject, Mary, there is a major online debate about whether declaring the phrase Christ is King is an attack on our Jewish brothers and sisters. This is what Catholic scholar Dr. Robert George told me this week.
We believe Christ is King. Definitely. There's no question about that. And when we proclaim Christ as King as a statement of our faith, we say what is true, and we honor Jesus Christ as the Son of God, our Savior, second person of the Blessed Trinity. But when anybody, Catholic or not, uses that wonderful truth, that wonderful phrase, Christ is King, as a taunt, as a way to express contempt for other people, to express hatred for Jewish people, when it becomes a taunt, that is blasphemy. That is taking something holy and debasing and degrading it, using it for immoral and wicked purposes.
Mary, can you comment on this point and this debate? This seems to really be at the crux of a lot of tension there. How do we as Catholics move forward in the Great Commission and proclaiming the gospel while maintaining relationship properly with our Jewish brothers and sisters?
Well, as always, it's very hard to improve on Professor George, and I am not able to do it, but I am able to observe that it is hard to think of anything more diabolical and transgressive than taking that phrase, Christ is King, and using it as an anti-Semitic taunt. It almost seems unimaginable that we have to remind people that Jesus was born a Jew, lived as a Jew, lived in a Jewish family with Jewish traditions, etc., etc. What would Jesus do about this is a question that Catholics need to ask themselves.
That being said, can you, Mary, put into perspective for us how seismic the Vatican II document Nostra Aetate is for our church as we celebrate 60 years now since its release?
Yes, it was seismic in the sense that it was a clarification of teaching that is, again, unsparing and unconditional. No acts of anti-Semitism are permissible by anyone at any time. No amount of sophistical reasoning or online trolling can get around those words. It's blanket, it's absolute. And it was followed by a number of strong statements by Catholic leaders reiterating what is said in Nostra Aetate, one of which is the Venerable Fulton Sheen, who was then Bishop of Rochester, and went out of his way time and again to reiterate that to be anti-Semitic is to be anti-Christian. That is a direct quote. Later, we had John Paul II and a succession of leaders, as George Weigel alluded to, saying the same thing. So again, there is no wiggle room for Catholics in this matter.
Mary Eberstadt, thank you for your clarity and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Catherine.
Thank you.